All right, we're going to get started. Welcome to 5 lead capture techniques you must start using. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions throughout the webinar, and we'll take as many of those as we can as we're presenting. Any questions we capture that we're not able to answer during the presentation, we'll be happy to follow up with you and answer in a future blog post. I'm joined here today by Greg Bray, President and co-owner of Blue Tangerine. And again, I'm Laura Smous, VP of Marketing at AtlasRTX. AtlasRTX combines AI chatbots with real live humans to create real-time engaging experiences 24/7 in any language. We're headquartered in Park City, Utah, and we use these real-time experiences to capture, nurture, qualify, and convert buyers. And Greg, I'll let you introduce yourself and Blue Tangerine.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. This is Greg Bray from Blue Tangerine, and we're excited about today's webinar and appreciate Laura working together with us to make this happen. Blue Tangerine is a full-service digital marketing agency, and we're excited to help you build a better website, drive more traffic to that website, and then convert more leads and sales from that traffic. And that's why we're really excited about today's topic, which is all about helping you get more leads. Everybody wants more leads. So we've got several different techniques and things that we feel that a lot of you probably are not using yet online. I'm going to share a few, and then Laura has some to share as well. And the first one is what we call our Popover invitation. And this is something you've probably seen in the e-commerce world where it's been a little more widely adopted. But it's an opportunity to also be used in other types of environments. And basically how it works is when a visitor comes to your website, there's a little delay of maybe 3 to 5 seconds before an overlay is what we call it appears. So the background kind of gets faded a little bit, and you've got, you see the little screenshot here, just a special little message that pops up. And this is usually an invitation to maybe sign up for the newsletter or register for the site or something. And the visitor has an opportunity to put in their email, maybe a name, maybe answer 1 or 2 questions, and then move forward. Then after they do that, whether they sign up or not, we set what's called a cookie in their browser that allows us to say, hey, they've already been invited. Don't keep popping it up and doing it over and over again. And of course, your ideal scenario is that you submit this contact information directly into your CRM system, whichever one you happen to be using. So that's kind of how that popover invitation works. Now, of course, one of the big questions we get whenever we talk about this one is, doesn't that bother people when they pop up? Because, well, I don't want to do anything that annoys my site visitors. And there's been some tests that have been done. And one particular one that we found showed that there was actually no real significant change in the bounce rate. And a bounce rate, for those who aren't familiar, is how someone comes to your site and then leaves immediately without continuing further into the site. It's called a bounce. So for this particular test, they increased their subscription rate almost double, and their bounce rate really didn't change. So adding the pop-up simply got them more signups on their newsletter. Now, of course, when we look at the best practices, you've got to do your own testing. Don't just assume because one test had a positive impact, you know, your site, your situation may be different. You need to always kind of test this. When you put that message up there, remember to give them a good reason to sign up. People don't give away their email addresses really easily. You got to give them a good reason. Right? That whole "what's in it for me," me being them, not you, right? So what's in it for me? Give them a good reason. Keep it simple so they don't have to read a lot. You know, just get a coupon. You know, sign up now. Get some type of benefit that you can give them. Keep it simple, and then don't just use the site as part of the feedback, but make sure you've got a follow-up email as well that comes back to them. You know, a thank you that's maybe has more information, something that they can read a little bit more, because now you've got them on the list. Let them know what they're going to start getting from you, and be take advantage of that. Not just a thanks for signing up. You know, use that email as well as part of the communication. Again, this popover invitation is kind of our first opportunity. Pretty straightforward to implement into your site. Doesn't require, you know, a million hours of programming work to add. It's going to vary a little bit based on how your site's configured, but it works really well at getting more people signed up to your list, getting that started.
And Greg, can you tell us a little more about measuring conversion with the popovers?
Sure. So the ideal measurement of conversion, of course, is did somebody sign up? That's the first thing for this particular message. Did they sign up? So to do that effectively, you're going to want to be tracking in your analytics how many times the pop-up's been viewed and how many times somebody has been filled out the form. And so to do that does require a little bit of extra tracking code if you're using Google Analytics, which is what most folks are using for this type of tracking. I'm going to make sure that we've got some what's called event tracking associated with those, so that when that pop-up shows, we get an event, and when someone fills out the form or hits submit, we get a completion or a conversion event, so that we can then look at that rate and track that as well. So absolutely, that's an important part. And as you test, got to make sure that you've got that conversion measurement in place, so that you know, am I getting more, and are they coming from the pop-up, or is it coming from some completely separate effort? Thanks. Absolutely.
And are there any best practices to keep in mind for mobile specifically when we think about these?
The biggest difference in mobile, of course, is the real estate you've got to communicate your message. A popover that scrolls is not good. So,
okay.
You know, you really got to keep it short, sweet, and simple on mobile, so that it can't be some big long form. It can't be 20 fields they have to fill out. You know, just typically, if you can get away with just email address, that's ideal. Just one field. If you have a couple other questions that you need to ask them to get them in the right place, then do so, but keep it to, you know, 3 or less. And of course, the message has to be short and simple, so we're not scrolling on mobile.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the next, yeah, my pleasure. The next one is what we call a persistent footer. So the way that this works on the site is you get a piece of code that we anchor to the bottom of the page, so that it's always there. So basically, think of it as the page scrolls by, this little strip at the bottom doesn't move. Okay, so what we then do on this footer is we make sure that we've got the key links for communication opportunities. This is especially effective on mobile, where the pages tend to scroll more just because you can't get as much on the page height-wise. So this way, they don't have to go back to the top or down to the bottom to find your phone number or the contact button or whatever it is that you're looking for in e-commerce, keeping an add to cart button there as they look at that product detail page. Again, so they don't have to go back up and down any more than they need to take the key action that you want from them. Now, you also want to make sure that you're focusing again on these contact links like call now or chat or email, things like that. And we've really seen some great impact on just adding this to the site. Laura, if you go to the next slide, we've did one test for one of our clients where just adding this footer, they had a 29% increase in calls coming from, or excuse me, in the conversion rates from the calls, and 17% increase just in total calls coming from the website. Now, again, mobile calls are even more important. Sometimes with mobile, when we look at the best practices for this, websites in general have always been somewhat email focused, right? We have forms, we're sending emails, but we get on mobile now, and we need to remember that this device has this built-in technology called a phone in it that can actually call people and you can talk to them. And we forget that sometimes, and they're already holding it, and all they have to do is touch the phone number and it will call you, right? And they don't even have to type anything else. So making sure that we get that phone number front and center and keep it always on the screen is really one of the powerful pieces of this. Now, of course, chatting is also something people love to do on their phones. I think you'll talk a little bit more about chat. So having that link here too is great. One other thing that we really want to encourage is if for some reason you have different phone numbers. So for example, a builder that has different sales centers for each community, or a retailer that has, you know, a different number for certain types of products, or possibly different physical locations for storefronts. If they're on a page on the site where the phone number that is most relevant is different, then we want to make sure that we're changing that behind the scenes. So when they just hit the call, they don't need to know necessarily, but you're putting them in the right number. Get them as close as you can to talking to the right person as quickly as possible. Now, of course, every site's different. You've got to do your own testing. Maybe I'll say that over and over and over again, but when you make changes like this, test it. Make sure that you're measuring, have those conversion tracking. You know, are you tracking phone calls that come from your website in general? Because a lot of people don't do that by default, don't even realize they can. And you've got to have that in place before you can even begin to test this type of an update to make sure it's working. But it's, again, I think it's something that we're recommending as a best practice for all of our clients to start adding to their sites.
Great.
So the third one that we want to talk about is what we call favorites. Sometimes you might think of this as a wish list. Sometimes people call it creating a portfolio. Lots of different names for the same basic concept, right? So this is a way to let people save what they're looking at so they can find it more easily when they come back. And because of that, you're pulling them back to the site again and bringing them back. And you're also capturing some contact information as they create these accounts. So again, just kind of how it works, they're going to be looking at a specific product, or, you know, if that's e-commerce, a specific item you're selling, if it's specific home or community for a home builder type of a scenario. And then there's a button on the page. You can kind of see it's a little small in the screenshot, but favorites, where, you know, sometimes it's a heart because I like this one or something. And when they do that the first time and ask them to create an account, where you capture an email address, again, keeping that account form as simple as possible. You can also integrate that sign-up process with social media sites like their Facebook login, which can make it a little faster for them to connect. So you're creating this account, and now they come back to your site later, they can log in and they can see all the ones that they saved. This can be really powerful if you've got a product that is kind of more research heavy. For example, you know, buying a home, doing a lot of research. I'm coming and going. I'm not doing it all at one time while I'm sitting at the computer, so I may not remember everything, and I want to come back to it. And so being able to make this easy for them to save and come back and find what they're looking for. And at the same time, you're now building this profile about what it is that they like and are interested in. And you can connect that with some of your CRM tools or other tools and try to mine that a little bit and be able to maybe put the right kind of offer in front of them when you send them that email, and see how you can connect better with them as they're doing their research. You can get more advanced with this and let them make notes and some other types of annotations. Saving customizations to interactive floor plans is another thing that can be done in a similar concept. So lots of kind of pieces to this one. Well, the general idea is letting them save something and having them create an account so you get that lead capture from the account creation.
Great. And with the account creation, are there any trends you're seeing as far as how people are authenticating or how they prefer to have that account associated?
You know, I don't know that I've got any hard numbers on something like that, but I do feel like there is a group that prefers to use the social logins, like the Facebook login. But as we've been seeing some of the privacy issues kind of pop up related to some of this data, I would be curious to see if that continues or if people kind of prefer keeping a little bit of a separate account for each one. But it's definitely something that you want to pay attention to in your own site. I don't know that I've got big level trends though that I can speak to.
Sure, thank you. Well, that takes us to number 4, which is messaging as a channel. So for us, it's really about communicating with people the way that they communicate with each other. So in our daily lives, we barely answer the phone now, even if, or sometimes especially if it's our own mother calling, we really prefer to, in most cases, especially in the US, text each other. That also includes other forms of messaging like Facebook Messenger, but we like it so much that 91% of our mobile time is spent in messaging apps. And 98% of those text messages you're sending are read within 2 minutes. So when you compare that to the dwindling open rates for email, only 20% of email marketing messages are ever read. Just by considering text messaging or messaging as a channel, you're increasing your chances to not only get in front of people, but get your message seen and read, and in many cases responded to. And that also is a simpler path or a lower barrier path than a mobile app. So we have started to have so many things on our phones, so much clutter, that the number of apps people are downloading has really has shrunk dramatically. So 50% of us download 0 apps per month. And the main reason being that if it's not something you're going to be using every single day, and that's a lot of bloat to have on your phone, that's a lot of special navigation and things to learn just to perform a couple functions or get a few pieces of information. And so most of us use fewer than 6 apps on a regular basis. And so we're seeing that by putting the message in messaging as a channel, we're able to get over some of those barriers for adoption that apps have, or some of the challenges that we see even getting people to navigate that information on mobile websites. And especially when we look at, for example, our home builder clients, half of home builders prefer texting to phone calls, but only a very small percentage of agents are actually using text as a main communication method, meaning that if you're one of those sales professionals who starts to incorporate that in your process, you're getting a leg up on some of your competition just because people will be more receptive to your message. And we also know that there's some data to say that people actually convert at a 40% higher rate when they are receiving text messages. Now, of course, those messages, as Greg mentioned, they have to contain relevant information. We always say, give to get, so we don't want to be bombarding people with marketing messages. We want to be actually providing them information that they're looking for, soliciting feedback from them, and feedback that we're actually able to respond to and act on. But definitely by just incorporating text as part of that buyer journey, you're going to be able to reach quite a few more people. Also, by looking at that in our home builder client base, we've seen 40 to 60% engagement rates commonplace. So if you think about how few people pick up the phone when a sales professional calls them or respond to an email, and we're actually getting responses 40 to 60% of the time on average. And what that means is that these sales teams are able to actually understand who really does have buying intent, deprioritize people who may have seemed interested, but when they were able to reach out by text and get feedback, it turns out they weren't, or to really jump on those buyers that are ready to move forward. And we've also seen a 50% cut in sales time. So even for people that feel like, hey, we're going to sell everything we build, they're able to sell it in half the time, which is a huge advantage in terms of reducing costs. The other interesting thing, oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to ask you, Laura, a little bit about the reticence for the sales agents to use it. So many of them seem hesitant. Any ideas on what it is about it that kind of makes them hesitate?
Well, I think that some of it is just habit. So I think people are very used to associating phone calls with, generating a lot of activity, making a lot of phone calls, and not really considering that it's really the outcome that we're looking for, right? We're looking for the number of people you're actually able to connect with, and also, being able to find out what they really think. I think that's part of it. And sometimes people are hesitant to use their personal devices for that type of communication. So what we do in our platform is all of that texting happens from a centralized number that's associated with the business, or in this case, the community. And then that also means that if somebody's number changes or that person on the team leaves, all those messages are still tracked in the platform. So somebody else can pick up the conversation right there. I think the other possibility is that even though buyers want you to be responsive 24/7, maybe the actual sales professionals don't necessarily want to be responsive 24/7. So while it actually provides a much better customer experience, it does mean that we have to kind of change what we think about in terms of responsiveness and kind of what are your business hours, because a lot of times people are thinking about these things when they get home from work, or maybe they're getting ready for bed and they have a chance to ask some of those questions. So we need to be prepared, and we'll actually talk about that in a minute, to be responsive, because the worst thing you can do is open up a channel and then not be responsive. And then we also have a question related to this. Do you know if people are using platforms like WhatsApp or Telegram? And so that's a great question, and one we come across quite a bit. So we know that in a lot of areas outside of North America, SMS text can be expensive, and it's not as popular as it is here. People use things like WhatsApp, WeChat in Asia, and some other messaging platforms to do a lot of their both voice and message communication. And we actually are very actively trying to get into WhatsApp for Business, their pilot. So they have a closed business pilot right now, but our goal is to try and get into that as soon as it's opened up, so that we can offer that as sort of yet another channel. And that's also why we use Facebook Messenger to create another route in where people can use messaging. And if they prefer to do that versus SMS text, that works as well. And the other thing that we do is web chat. So we have a web chat that can transition then to a text messaging conversation if the person leaves the chat. So let's see here. There's a follow-up question to that, which is a text messaging platform to send messages from a centralized phone number. So in this case, like I said, we do that. So every business we work with has a phone number either associated to the entire business or to a particular location if they have multiple offices, and all of those communications come from that number and people can respond to that number. So it really is a way of sort of centralizing that and taking it away from the individual sales professional's phone, but making it accessible to everyone on that team. Great questions. And so part of the trends that are driving this are a desire for real-time experiences. So where in the past people used to be comfortable going to websites to navigate for information, downloading apps, as we start to have things and friends like Siri and Alexa in our homes, we've become very used to just asking for information. So as consumers, we're no longer agreeable to having to work to find information, having to sift through a lot of things that might not be relevant to us to get to what is relevant to us. And then that also has translated to us being sort of unwilling to context switch or to use a bunch of different things. I can complete part of the process online, but then I have to pick up the phone and call. We're not really willing to do that anymore. So we're seeing all of those channels converge, and the functionality and capabilities of messaging apps sort of expand to be inclusive of everything, really from finding information to communicating with an organization all the way to the end of that path to purchase. And so we've become quite spoiled in that way, and we really want to be able to do things anytime, anywhere, on our mobile devices, and to get the information that's relevant to us in bite-sized pieces. So, as consumers, if we think about even news, the amount of information that people are willing to process at any amount or at any point in time has really decreased. And so we have to adapt as marketing and sales folks to be delivering and thinking about delivering our messages in that really bite-sized, personalized, and relevant way. And personalized has also changed. So, not that many years ago, that could mean I'm going to, put your name and a token in an email, or I'm going to have a direct mailer that has some information that's customized for you. But it's really, again, being driven by the marketers. Now that things like natural language processing and machine learning have become so commonplace that we do have these connected devices in our homes, and that's personalization really means understanding what I'm asking for in the moment that I ask it, and serving me up a response that is, again, like I said, customized to me, only relevant to what I've asked. And really, we're going down the path of it, almost anticipating what people want to know before they even do ask it. And so that takes us to how can we be this responsive with these channels that are very real time, that people are using 24/7, that they can use from any spot while they're doing anything else. How can we as organizations respond and make sure that we are responsive? And so the fifth tip here is taking advantage of artificial intelligence chatbots. So that sounds very fancy, but really it's just a way of transferring some of that knowledge that right now you train your sales teams to have and to deliver to people, and capturing that using artificial intelligence. We also have the ability now to detect and translate in real time. So we can deliver that same experience to somebody, whether they're speaking English or Mandarin or Spanish. And the chatbots are smart enough now, and the technology exists to actually move with the user even as they transition from one language to another, and then maybe back to the original language. And so this is really just geared towards being able to capture, qualify, engage, and nurture 24/7. Buyers at this point not only tolerate, but expect chatbots. So we went through that sort of first wave of really dumb chatbots that were really just kind of glorified navigation devices. They'd push you down a very specific and narrow path. They would fail very quickly most of the time because they were more of a novelty and didn't really understand their purpose. And people would get frustrated and want to talk to a human that sometimes was very hard to reach very quickly. But now that we've kind of passed through that wave, we can use, like I said, these artificial intelligence or AI chatbots that are actually capable of learning with the more conversations people have with them, that can escalate to humans so they can know what they don't know and kind of do a graceful handoff to a human. And then they can, even if there's an answer that might take a little longer to get, they can set the buyer's expectations. So they can say, I know you have a sales question, or I know that you're looking for a price. Let me pass this to my human team and we'll get back to you within 2 minutes or 2 hours or 2 days, whatever that sort of service level agreement is. We find that people are actually really, really okay with it as long as they know what to expect. And the reason is because they're using channels like text messaging, and they're not sitting on the phone waiting or sending an email into the ether. They don't know if anyone received it, or that anybody's acting on their behalf while they're waiting for an answer. And so we're so comfortable with chatbots at this point in time that almost 60% of us have interacted with them. Nearly 90% of us believe brands should use them, and we actually trust them enough. We believe that they're smart enough at this point that almost 70% of us would make a purchase from a recommendation made by a chatbot, which really means that these chatbots, when used correctly, have tremendous power to help guide people towards purchases that are relevant to them, to help sort of illuminate your products and services, and do a lot of that qualification that otherwise would be happening hopefully over the phone, or things like that. The other thing that we see both with messaging and with chatbots is sort of an interesting phenomenon. So the same way that sometimes trolls on the internet are willing to say unkind things that they would never say to someone's face, it actually works in your favor when you think about buyers. So what we've seen is that buyers are much more candid about the experience they had with you, what they're looking for, their time frame, and their level of interest. So you're really able to reach out and get an honest answer, and knowing is always better than not knowing. Even in the case where someone might not be interested in a product or service that they've seen, let's say a model home visit, for example, we've seen some of our customers be able to take advantage of a cross-selling opportunity because they found out, wait, this person really loved the layouts, but they want a community where they have a 3-car garage as an option. And so by working together across locations or divisions, people can actually pass leads back and forth that otherwise would have been lost business. And even in the case of someone having a bad experience, because you're getting that information in real time, instead of sending out a survey by mail or by email that maybe will get responded to, but you might get that data 2 months later, you're able to fix a problem, whether it be that the store maybe is messy, or somebody had an interaction with someone who was rude. You can actually correct those problems in real time because you have that information in real time right in front of you. And then just a couple more statistics related to that. If we think about the fact that really we have a changing audience. So millennials will have 1.4 trillion in spending power by 2020, and they've grown up accustomed to the conveniences of this technology. Same thing with 75% of the workforce by 2022 will be millennials or younger. And so we really have to think about, even as employers, how we interact with our teams and how we empower them, adapting to what, like I said, what people are used to doing in their everyday lives and how they're used to consuming and receiving information.
Laura, I think this is really fascinating, being able to connect the way that people like to communicate now back into a business setting where we can, give them good feedback, be able to, kind of track that and expand upon it and learn from it. I'm amazed that when I look at, I've got some teenagers, that they will sit there and it'll take them 3 times as long to have a text conversation as it would have taken them to actually call someone and ask the same question, but they don't want to call. They just don't. And as they become adults, I don't know that there's anything that's going to force them to change that desire. And so I think, being able to use the technology to embrace that is awesome. And it's going to be a real differentiator for those who adopt it now. Eventually maybe it'll be so mainstream everybody will have it, but right now it's a real opportunity to jump ahead, I think. So
yeah.
I think it's pretty exciting.
It absolutely is. And I think something else to keep in mind is that because these chatbots do take advantage of machine learning, the more data that you pass through it, the smarter they get. So the earlier you start, the farther ahead you'll be, the greater of a head start you'll have versus your competitors, because you have been collecting all of that data. Those chatbots have been learning, and you're able to really understand what people are looking for. And I think that, that's another piece of this that's a little bit on the more technical side, but they take advantage of what's called a conversational user interface, which means that instead of as a marketer, structuring information in a layout or a navigation structure that you find intuitive, and then tracking how people traverse that, we're actually able to just see how people think about and ask about challenges or information or our products and services. So we're able to understand how we're being perceived or understood in plain English, because that's how people are interacting with the chatbot. And so, as you start to have more of those conversations, you're able to mine a tremendous amount of data and really understand with a very realistic eye, like I said, how people are thinking about their need, their buying intent, and all the way down to the purchases that they make. So it's really closing a loop that marketers have had to kind of cobble together for years and years with different technologies. We're able to see that whole conversation and that whole path to purchase in their language, which is really amazing if we think about it.
Absolutely. So a question, Laura, that came up is how hard is that initial learning process? If I wanted to set one of these up, how long does it take to kind of load my information into one of these chatbots?
Sure. Well, it can actually be quite rapid. So a lot of the machine learning that's available today to build chatbots on top of takes into account a lot of normal conversational things. So they're already good at learning things like that, just understanding variations in normal conversation. And then you layer on top of that sort of the domain specific things. So if we think about, and we do work in the event industry, if we think about the types of things people want to know when they go to, let's say, a conference, what's the Wi-Fi password? How much is registration? Can I cancel my registration? We start to see those same questions come up over and over. And so the chatbots are able to really get smarter with each one that's built, right? Because all of those questions are common. Same thing in the home purchase process. People are looking for floor plans. They want to know what's the price. They want to know when certain models are available. Is there an HOA? So we're able to leverage all that knowledge that might not even be specific to our company, but is specific to the process. Same thing with lead qualification and trying to get people, let's say, to a demo request. Most people are following somewhat of the same process and have the same challenges now. And so we're really able to, like I said, get get smarter and faster with each one that we build. And then you have those things that are domain specific, you know, that are really related to your product or service or process or problem solving if it's a customer service use case. And what I always coach people is that, you know, if the answer is no, and it's well understood and you can get to it quickly with a human, that's a really great place to start. If you have a process that requires 6 people and 17 emails over the course of 2 weeks to figure out the right answer, that might not be an ideal place to start when you're thinking about implementing a chatbot. So, you know, high transactional volume, well understood process, and there is a right answer that someone can get to. Those are great places to start. And again, we're not trying to eliminate humans or push humans out of the equation here. What we really want to do is start shifting our human resources to those higher value interactions. So somebody just getting a link or reading about something, if we can facilitate that happening without a human having to stop what they're doing, answer that question, and then go back to what they were doing, at scale, that's really a tremendous time saver for them. And again, it allows them to nurture those human relationships, to build deeper relationships, and to spend time doing those relationship building activities that humans are really good at.
Makes sense. Terrific. Thanks.
Absolutely. So just to recap, how do we get more and better leads? And we can take advantage of popover invitations that prompt people for information. We can use persistent footers to put that important contact information and all of those various ways that you can contact an organization on every page. We can utilize favorites and give people ways to not only engage with you, but to flag what's important to them and give you some insight into their preferences. We can take advantage of messaging as a channel so that we're putting our information where people already are and where they're already comfortable communicating. And then we can make those channels even more responsive by using AI chatbots to do a lot of that information capture and qualification and engagement that can happen anytime, anywhere, and as we mentioned, in any language.
Well, we certainly appreciate everybody joining us today. If you do have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the question box or the chat box there. We take a few more here, but while you're doing that, we wanted to make you aware that we do have a special offer for today's attendees. And this is for those who are attending the live broadcast, which is as opposed to those who may be looking at this recorded in the future. So you get the perk for having shown up today. But we're offering a special free website journey. Sorry, Laura, I jumped on yours.
That's okay. But you know what? We'll go ahead to yours.
All right. Sorry. Okay. Free website audit that Blue Tangerine's willing to offer, where we'll take a look at your site, go through your analytics, and give you some recommendations of things we feel you might be missing or opportunities to do even better with your website.
And, excuse me. And in the same vein, we're offering a free customer journey audit for those live attendees today. So we'd love to sit down with you, look at all those touch points you have right now with potential buyers in your customer journey, and maybe uncover some opportunities where text messaging or AI chatbots might help you capture, qualify, and convert more leads. And so again, if you'd like to take advantage of either of those, we'll leave this information up for just a couple more minutes, but please do feel free to reach out to either Greg or me, or to visit either of our websites and learn a little bit more about how you can start incorporating some of these techniques in your business today.
So Laura, we do have a couple other questions that have come in. One of them is how well do the chatbots do with bad grammar and slang terms?
They actually do very well. So again, that's one of those things that with machine learning and with building on top of some of the more robust AI that's available, we're able to take into account things like common misspellings. There are things that are something like, let's call it a fuzzy match, right? So it's either a common misspelling or it's a close version of something that you've stated should have some meaning. And the chatbot's capable of understanding that the person actually means that, even if they didn't say it or type it verbatim. We'll also say that, you know, we do build some things based on what we see when people get frustrated or some common patterns in terms of when it might need to be escalated to a human. So you're capable of sort of designing those experiences as well, but also considering the context. So somebody that might be interacting with a chatbot for medical advice might be different than somebody who's interacting with the chatbot to find out about a software product, right? So we take into account kind of what's the nature of the communication, what's the subject matter at hand, and then try and be sensitive to that so we can make the chatbot even better at understanding some of those things in context.
Thank you. And another question we got is regarding the website phone numbers. Do you recommend various numbers for different tracking purposes? And I think call tracking with the website is something that people need to take a closer look at, and it is an opportunity for you to identify where on the site or which types of campaigns drive a particular lead to you. So for example, there's technology now so that you can differentiate if this visitor to your site came from your email newsletter, or if they came from an AdWords campaign, or if they came from just SEO, organic SEO search, that you can tweak the phone number that they see so that based on which number they call, you can now say, hey, this lead came from this particular marketing campaign. And we call that call tracking technology. It's certainly something that we recommend taking a look at. It is a lot easier to implement than it used to be, and a lot more affordable than it used to be. But if you're not going to do anything with it, then it's also not worth the effort and the expense to do so. So it really kind of depends on what kinds of decisions you're going to be making with your marketing and such. But overall, I think it's a great way to even better see where your leads are coming from and which of your campaigns and promotional efforts are making a difference.
Great. And then, Greg, I have just another question that came up for you. What are you seeing with the persistent footers? What are you seeing in terms of popularity between like a chat versus a phone call, things like that? Are people, is it spread fairly evenly, or are people gravitating towards one or another?
Well, I think that's a little skewed because everybody's got a phone number and a lot of people don't have chat even available. So it's a little harder to be global. And so I'll be honest, I haven't studied that directly from a particular client that's got both up and running. That would be a great question to go take a look at and see how that skews. But I think phone is probably going to win right now, just because a lot of people don't have chat available still, right. And it's growing. So, but I don't have. I hate to just make it up and guess when I don't have real data. So we believe in data-driven decisions. So I gotta wait for my data.
We do as well. So with that, I think we will wrap up. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Greg, so much for being our special guest today. Again, please feel free to reach out to either of us at any time with any questions or follow-up information, or to take advantage of that journey audit or that website audit. And the recording of this webinar will be made available, and you will also get a link to that. And for anyone that was unable to join us today, they'll be able to view the recorded webinar as well. So we will give you back 15 minutes of your hour. And thank you again, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.